but you can see how easily that cracks open. It's so good. Welcome to Nourish Nutrition, where we're not following the recipe. Cooking for one requires a little bit of using what you've got and adapting to make it work. And I'm gonna show you how. I'm Rebecca, or Frazzled Cook Barbie today. Here's my 5-minute costume. I am the dietitian and home cook behind the scenes at Nourish Nutrition blog. And I'm here to show you how to not follow the recipe and make cooking for one work for you. Okay, so today I'm really excited to share with you my favorite Halloween treat. Now, Halloween candy is fantastic. It's a great way to enjoy enjoyable foods, but sometimes you end up with more than you want to eat as candy, or you just want a different way of eating it. So I am excited to share with you my Halloween candy bark. Now this bark is, it's so good. It's nice and chocolatey. It's got toasted quinoa, which I am 0% a quinoa fan. I do not enjoy it, but I cannot get enough of it in this recipe. It adds, I'm gonna toast it. If I didn't just say that, I'm gonna toast it, and it's gonna add this really nice nutty flavor to the crunchy uncooked quinoa that is so good in this bark. So let me show you the ingredients and we're gonna get started. Today I'm gonna be focusing on the easiest version that I can make because I don't really have any candy on me. Well, that's not true. I have candy, but I haven't been into chocolate candies lately. I've really just been enjoying like Starbursts and candies like that. And well, those aren't gonna go so great with dark chocolate in this bark. So I'm sticking with peanut butter M&Ms, which I really like, and I was able to find in the bulk section at Winco, which I really love. All of these ingredients I actually got there, which is so nice. I'm able to get what I want and I need. It's less expensive and less plastic waste. So let me show you how to make it. Okay, so I'm gonna start with, I'm actually gonna chop these up. I'd rather have some small pieces versus a whole M&M to eat, and they're gonna spread out easier in the bark. So this recipe calls for using about a cup. Let's see how easily these chop up. Just be very careful for your fingers. I don't think I've ever tried to chop M&Ms before. This is, we'll see if it's worth it. So you can use any kind of candy that you like. I would recommend chocolate candies. Chocolate of some sort candies that'll be good with chocolate. I have made this with nuts and also candy corn, which is actually really good. I'm not a big fan of candy corn, but I like it in this bark. So that could even be a way to use up candy corn, or maybe even some candies that you kind of like but don't really like if you want to. Or you can always donate the candies that aren't your favorite, because everybody's got different preferences. See how many end up on the floor. So I'm not gonna chop them up super small, especially with this. A little bit difficult as this is, but I do want smaller-ish pieces, so it's gonna be easier to distribute them on the bark. And also, it's like bite-sized pieces versus huge, big M&Ms. Again, this is just preference. You can do whatever you want, what works for you. I'm usually about making things as easy and quick as possible, but even a little bit annoying as this is, I think I'd rather still take the time to chop these up. Okay, 3 more? 1 more, yay. Okay, and I like that they're a little uneven, so you're gonna get different pieces throughout. So my first step here is to measure out about 1/3 of a cup of quinoa. Now, measurements in this aren't gonna be the absolute most important, but I do kind of want to measure it because I'm not a big quinoa fan. I don't want to end up with an amount that's not gonna, I don't want to have to make more, and I also don't want to have to figure out what to do with it afterward. I just want to use it all. So I heated it up over medium low heat. My stove gets really hot. So I'm just gonna cook it and keep an eye on it for about 5 or 7 minutes until it starts to toast up. So you are going to want to keep them moving so they don't get too burnt, And you can do that with a spatula by stirring it, or you can kind of shake the whole pan with your wrist gently. I can kind of tell this is about getting done because the individual quinoa pieces, kernels, I don't know what they are exactly, are getting browned, and I'm really smelling, it's a little bit barely slightly nutty, kind of reminds me of popcorn, just like plain popcorn scent. It's becoming much more fragrant, you can actually smell it, and it's getting brown, and so that's a good sign that you're about done. They can burn pretty quickly and easily, so I'd recommend once they start to look like they're getting done, cut the heat, turn it off, remove them, and this will be good because you can just set them aside and let them cool off. I'll be honest here, preparing over the stove is not ideal, not recommended, but it's kind of the easiest and most straightforward place for me, so that's what I'm gonna be doing here. Okay, so next I'm gonna add about a cup of chocolate chips to a microwave safe bowl. I'm gonna kind of spread them out a little bit so they can cook a tiny bit more evenly. I'm going to heat this up in 30 to 45-ish second increments in the microwave until it gets nice and melted. Now, you can stop and stir it in between every time. Just let it go slowly. I'm gonna show you how I do this, and this is through a little bit more experience, trial and error, and kind of figuring it out. So I'm gonna cook it for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. I'll let you know afterward. And then I'll show you kind of what I do to test it to see if I wanna cook it for longer. Okay, so I have put my chocolate chips in the microwave for a minute, and I'm just gonna kind of jiggle them and see. The chocolate chips that don't really move are the ones that are melted, and the ones that are moving are not melted yet. So I'm gonna cook this for another 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna give it a stir. So this is kind of one way to save just a moment of time, and a good way to kind of see how it's doing. Okay, so I microwaved these for 30 more seconds, and if you can tell, it's quite melted. The top chocolate chips are not completely melted, but oftentimes stirring them helps the rest melt, and it'll be ready to go. I might need to microwave it one more time. I don't think so. You can really see it smoothing out, and there's just a few tiny little chunks in here. Yeah. So I really like microwaving my chocolate because it's quick, it's less messy, you don't have to pay attention to it quite as closely as if you were to do a double boiler, and it turns out really nicely. And I don't even add anything to this. One more note before we get to assembling all of this is I made the chocolate last because I want the chocolate to be nice and warm before pouring it out onto the pan. So do everything before the chocolate, or quickly chop up the M&Ms or whatever your candies are while that's heating up, but you want to do this last. But actually, before I spread it out on the pan, I do want to add the quinoa to here. You can sprinkle it over the top like you would the candies, but I kind of like mixing it in because you get the pops of the quinoa throughout the chocolate. It's really fun. So let's transfer to baking dish. Okay, so I'm pouring the chocolate onto a cookie sheet, and I highly recommend using a baking mat or parchment paper or something, because it's gonna make taking the bark out so much easier. And I will show you once we get there. So I'm just gonna spread this out pretty thin. The thinner it is, the easier it is to break apart, which this is bark, so you break it apart. But just kind of use your own preferences as your guide. Looks like it's not quite gonna cover the whole pan. That's fine. I could use the back of this knife to scrape it off. I wouldn't want to use the blade on here because it'll dull the blade and also kind of scrape up my spatula that I would like to last as long as it possibly can. And then I'm just gonna kind of spread this out. Yeah, there you go. Looks intentional, doesn't it? Next, I'm gonna sprinkle my candies on top. Again, use what you have, what you want. I didn't have these on hand either. I just bought them at the store, but I mean, chocolate and peanut butter and quinoa, who would have thought? It really can't get better. You can cover it as much as you want or as little as you want. Might as well go for lots covered because every bite's gonna be absolutely delicious. And I'm also gonna add just a pinch of salt for a nice little salty flavor. I'm using kosher salt. It's a little flaky, which is gonna give you a nice pop. Now, this isn't gonna break apart unless you refrigerate it. So I'm gonna throw this in the fridge for 15 minutes. It takes about that long to harden up enough to be able to break it apart, and you can always refrigerate it for longer. I would refrigerate it for just about an hour or so total, and then store it in a container, and that's gonna help preserve the nice sheen of the chocolate, and it's not gonna get those white spots. Not that that makes it inedible, but it looks a little bit nicer this way, and you're gonna wanna keep the moisture and not dry out too much. It is done and ready to break apart. Let's do that. Okay, so this is kind of the fun part and also really easy part if you use a liner or parchment paper under it. All you're gonna do is peel this off. See, it's just so easy. If you let it cool directly on the pan, it wouldn't come off at all. So, don't even need a knife unless you want very specific pieces. I'm just gonna break this up. You could even break it up as you're pulling the mat or parchment off. Either works. And this way you can get the sizes that you want. They're all gonna be uneven, which is kind of part of the fun, right? Here you go. You see that? See that nice chocolate with the toppings? Okay, here we go. All done. This bark is so easy, so delicious. You can put like as many toppings on it as you want to, or whatever toppings that you want. Again, something that kind of goes well with chocolate is a great place to start. It's so good. I use bittersweet chocolate chips, which I love. They're my favorite. Do you hear how crunchy that is? The quinoa just tastes a little bit nutty and has such a nice crunch, and then the pieces of just the small little flakes of salt are really nice on it. I love this. It's a great gift to give somebody, or it's great to bring to a Halloween party to enjoy for yourself, or even put other toppings on it. I mean, this is even like super Halloween-y either, because it's not super Halloween candy. So make it however you want to or need to, and use it however you want to. I'm curious what kinds of toppings that you would really like on it. Leave a comment with your favorite toppings, and I'm excited to read through those. So, and also subscribe and like this video if you want to see more. The more subscribes and likes that we get, more people can see this, and I hope that this is helpful for somebody. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.